Rugby League lost a true legend yesterday when Bob Fulton died, aged 74. Tonight on NRL 360, we celebrate the life and career of the man we all knew as Bozo.
Bob Fulton didn't just play rugby league. He didn't just coach. Bob Fulton changed rugby league. Bozo was tough, skillful, elusive, but above all, he was the best.
Fulton, the brilliant Fulton, and Fulton scores! What a great try!
Premierships, kangaroos, captain, coach. He will always be remembered as one of the 4 original rugby league immortals. And away from the game, he was every bit as untouchable. Fiercely loyal and a great mate. What about those lunatics on the continuous call team? Bozo, Ray and Chippy, making us cry with laughter every weekend. 50 years at the top of his game, he wielded influence right to the end. Even on the day he died, there he was pulling the strings at Bankwest. Josh Schuster, the Manly kid Bozo discovered at 14, promised Scott Fulton before kick-off he'd do his dad proud. 3 try assists to lead the Seagulls to victory over the old foe Para. There was Bozo going out a winner one last time. Bob Fulton, dead at 74, but forever immortal.
Welcome to a special edition of NRL 360, where we celebrate the life and career of the great Bob Bozo Fulton. Paul Kent, good evening to you.
Hey,
Ray Hadley and Phil Rothfield also at the desk. It's been a very sad couple of days in rugby league, and I want to start by talking about the man. We'll get to the player shortly. Ray, I might start with you. I know you were very, very close with Bob. Tell me about the Bozo that you knew that perhaps others didn't.
Family was everything. Anne, his devoted wife, was his first and only love. And the kids parallel with that, Scott, Brett, Christy, and then the grandkids, of course. And for all the things he achieved on the rugby league field as a player and a coach, his greatest joy was attached to his family. And I observed that for over 3 decades. He never, ever changed in relation to that. He used to give me a bit of a hurry up every now and then about kids and, you know, later on grandkids and what you needed to do. And he was the ultimate father, husband, and later on grandfather. That's what I knew about him, apart from all the other things he achieved in life.
So PK, I know you ended up very close friends with Bozo. You would have started watching him as a young rugby league fan, then covering him as a young upcoming journo. But when you became his friend, what did you get to know about the man?
Oh, look, he'd go into the fight for you. You know, I started out, but when I came into covering the game, he was a coach already. He was retired as a player, obviously. And there was a few times you butted heads with him, but I found in him that if you stood up to him, he could bully you. And if you stood up to him, he'd ring you up the next day and say, "You know what, mate, you're all right. Yeah, keep ringing me." And from that moment on, the respect began there and the friendship began. And, I got to the point where towards the last 10, 15 years, we'd go away to his farm together and weekends and whatnot. And I just found that he, from just my personal point of view, he always supported me. He'd ring me up sometimes and he'd say, "Yeah, what about that column you've written today, and he'd be into me about it, and I'd say, well, what's wrong with it? And he'd say, well, you know, and he'd start going line by line, you know what I mean? And he'd start tearing it, and you'd say, hey, and you'd argue back.
He was being the coach.
He was being the coach, but then he'd get to the end and he'd go, that's fair enough. And that was it.
Kenny, you talk about his rugby league intellect. There are a couple of tricky columns I wrote over the years that needed more rugby league nous than I had, and I'd email it to Bozo and I'd say, am I on the right track? And he'd send it back with just discreet changes, but you know, he was so helpful. And
it's fascinating.
Yeah, no, well, that's what he was like, you know, and he liked to see it. You know, I didn't get the phone calls you got as often because of his input.
It's interesting what you say, because say you put him and Blocker in a room together, two real students of the game, and then you'd hear him interview Bellamy or Bennett or one of the preeminent coaches. And even though I've been covering the game for nearly 40 years, as you have, you sit there wide mouthed, because they'd be talking about things you couldn't possibly understand unless you were at that intellectual level in rugby league terms. And then he turned from being that to being a scallywag and a lunatic with a continuous call team. I even got him to sing once. The Robertson brothers said, everyone sung, you know, we did these parodies, and you've sung, Blocker sung, Broman sung, Chippy sung, what about Bozo? I said, you're 1,000,000 to 1. So I rang Boz. I said, they want you to sing a song. He said, who? I said, he said, they're mad. I said, I know that, but they want you to sing a song. He said, where are they? And he could let loose as I can with a few profanities when he needed to. And I told him Springwood.
Thanks. His text messages.
Yeah, don't talk about them. But anyway, he said, Springwood, what, in the Blue Mountains? He said, I'll sing, but I'm not going there. Get him to bring the gear down to the beaches. So I rang the boys and said, you've got to go down there. Well, he sang this song. And I couldn't believe that I got an immortal to send himself up in a parody written by the boys. And he just was... He was unique.
You talk about that intellect too, and you see coaches come and go in the game, and you see coaches, the game starts to leave them behind, and their ideas on the game are a little bit old. And not every coach, but a lot of coaches. Even, you know, God bless him, Jack Gibson. Towards the end, Jack's last couple of years as coaching the Cronulla, he was coaching a game that wasn't being played anymore and couldn't figure out why he couldn't win. But Bozo, right to the very end, was still offering advice and still spot on with how he read the game, how he saw the game. And as we saw in that piece just that opened the show there with John Schuster, he's been pitching to Manly for a long time. John Schuster is going to be a superstar.
He never got trapped. But he was always growing and evolving.
And see, Ben, that was the trick to him, right? He didn't get stuck in... This is as stubborn and as strong-willed mentally and as he was, he didn't get stuck in, this is how I think and you're all going to think the same thing. He was always prepared to listen to other people, take in advice, look at another way to see things. And I think that's where our friendship, because we used to bounce ideas and talk about all sorts of silly stuff together, but he always listened as much as he talked.
Kenny, you know his fingerprints and his influence, though, with people like Josh Schuster, went a lot wider and broader than Manly. And I'll tell a story. The best football general manager in the NRL by 100 lengths is Frank Panisi at Melbourne. 1994, Johnny Lewis, their trainer, had to pull out of a kangaroo tour. Costa Zoo had a fight coming up. Frank was working at the New South Wales Rugby League, so Bozo took Frank on tour. He was so impressive with the Kangaroos, he then put him on at Manly, so he had Arco and Bozo. And they've stayed particularly tight ever since. And there's a little bit of Bozo DNA in what Storm are doing, just through...
It's pretty good DNA.
Just the grounding in rugby league he gave Frank Panisi. Frank will tell you that.
Now, Kenny, what did you write today? I mean, that expression you used about him, the last par in your column, it was brilliant, about the influence he's had.
The greatest presence in the game.
Yeah.
He was he had a stamp on everything that happened in the game. When he was around the game, he was... The guy, as a coach, he had his phone call to Arco. Arco could get the Prime Minister on the phone. Few people have understood how to wield power like Bozo did.
Kerry Packer.
Kerry Packer.
Alan Jones. He
had everybody on the phone. One call, and that was all it took to get some result. And look, to be honest, it pissed a lot of people off over the years. A lot of rival clubs would get upset that...
You're not suggesting Bozo pissed people off, are you? That's a disgraceful assertion.
Kenny, Bolts, the time he said about Bill Harrigan, I want to run him over with a cement truck, he's so powerful, I don't even think he got fined.
No.
Do you know, they were too scared to fine him.
I don't think he said it in a post-match presser though, did he?
I think he did down at
No,
Cronulla.
he waited for him in the tunnel.
Did he?
No, he did it quietly and subtly.
But the other clubs blew up deluxe.
Yeah.
You know.
So what about that? I mean, Ray's right. That thing you wrote about, the presence he held across the entire game, it was almost like a shadow cast, because even up in Queensland, we knew about the reputation of Bob Fulton and the power he wielded. But that other sentence was about you didn't love Bob Fulton because you knew him. You got to know Bob Fulton because you loved him.
Yeah. Look, what I wrote was, people will say, "Oh, to know him is to love him." You know, well, you met Bozo, you didn't love him, but once you got to know him, then you could. That's when the affection formed.
So when you made the effort to get in, earn his trust,
and look, he had his little circle, and not everyone was able to infiltrate that. No, a lot of journos over the years, from my experience and my part of it all, would have been blistered by him and are terrified of him. And I can see why. I had a clash a couple of times with him, a pretty heavy duty. I told the story. I wrote a story he didn't like one day, and I was at my mum and dad's place having dinner, and the phone rang, and mum answered the phone, and he was in England in the '95 World Cup. She walked in, she said, "Paul, Bob Fulton's on the phone." He found me at my mum's place. You know, mum and dad sitting there looking at me.
I gave him the number.
But you know what I mean? And that ability, because he let nothing slip. He was right to the end. He would fight for every bone. And as you get older, you think, "Oh, I don't care anymore. I'm too old to worry about it." He didn't. He fought for every bone. And if there's something he didn't like, we did in the media. He did it with players. He did it with rival coaches. He saw the world his way in that way, and he fought for what he believed in. But if you knew him and he took you in, and he looked after me a lot in a lot of ways. And once I was in the circle, I felt his affection towards me, and I felt the fact that he cared enough to actually talk to other people on my behalf and smooth things over or open doors or whatever was necessary. Yeah. He would do that for you.
You know, you spoke about the support he gave you. Now, in the time I've been broadcasting, I'm older than you blokes, so I encountered a lot of loyal people, some disloyal people as well, but a lot of loyal people. He was the most stoic of people I encountered. And obviously, doing what I do, you hit a hurdle every now and then. And he never, ever, ever resolved from the fact that he'd support me. He would counsel me privately about some things I may have done, but publicly, he'd just say, "I'll back you 100%, but this can't happen
So I don't
again."
want to talk out of school. Tell them the story about him bringing your daughter, Emma, out for your 60th birthday. It's a beautiful story.
Well, I was having a rough trot, as you well know, Buzz, at the time, so it was about 6 years ago. And my daughter was in the United States of America, and I'd made overtures to bring her, and things weren't really good. I'd had a marriage breakup, and she resisted attempts to come back, and I didn't know why. And I said to her sisters, "You've got to get Emma back here for my 60th birthday party. It's a really important thing." And she kept making excuses and kept talking about it. What I didn't know is Bob and Ann had spoken to her privately and said, "You're coming back for your father's birthday, but you can't tell him." So she kept resisting my overtures. So on the night, I'm in a room full of people I love, including the Fultons, and I'm in the middle of thanking everyone for coming, you know, to open proceedings, and Singo's there, and, you know, my family are there, my son's there, 2 of my 3 daughters are there, and through the door walks my middle daughter. Well,
Should have seen him bawling.
I started sobbing, and because I was overwhelmed, and I look across the line, and here's Bozo going, you know,
Gotcha.
and gotcha,
lovely.
and I said to her, you know, to confirm what happened. She said, "Oh, Mr. and Mrs. Fulton brought me out," and I mean, I hugged him on the 27th of March when he came to my wedding, and that night I wouldn't let go of him. I just kept hugging him. I couldn't believe that someone would do that for me, and that was a measure of the man. But loyalty. And by the way, you know, when you command that loyalty from someone, I responded in kind. I mean, you know, I stuck fat with him as much as I possibly could, and, you know, for the same reason, because it wasn't just a word with him, it was a way of life.